Ahoy mateys and welcome back to Timeless Sagas. Today, we're going to set sail on a thrilling journey through the history of pirates. Yar, I promise it'll be a swashbuckling adventure. So, grab your eye patches, polish your peg legs, and hoist the Jolly Roger. It's time to dive into the world of piracy. Our tale begins in ancient times, when the first sea bandits roamed the waters. Records of piracy date back to as early as 1400 BC when the Sea Peoples, a mysterious confederation of maritime raiders, wreaked havoc in the Mediterranean. The Greeks and Romans also had their fair share of piracy shenanigans, with the Cilician pirates being a particularly notorious bunch. They once kidnapped a young Julius Caesar, who was so unimpressed with their ransom demand that he told them to double it. Talk about bravado, eh? But let's fast forward a bit to the so-called Golden Age of Piracy, which spanned the late 17th and early 18th centuries. This was the age of legendary pirates like Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, and William Kidd, aka Captain Kidd. It was a period marked by flourishing trade, colonial expansion, and, of course, plenty of piracy. Now, let's debunk some myths, shall we? First things first, not all pirates were bloodthirsty outlaws. Some, like Sir Francis Drake and Jean Bart, were privateers. These swashbuckling gents were government-sanctioned maritime marauders who targeted enemy ships during times of war. They were like the Navy SEALs of their day, only with more gold hoop earrings and parrots. But what about the real pirates? What drove them to a life of plunder and lawlessness? Well, a whole host of factors, really. Some were ex-privateers who found themselves out of work after the wars ended. Others were sailors who had been press-ganged into service against their will and decided to take their chances on the open sea. And some were just regular folks who fancied a bit of adventure, a chance to escape the dreary drudgery of their day-to-day lives. Piracy was a dangerous profession, but it could also be quite lucrative. Pirates would seize ships and plunder their cargo, sometimes making off with a small fortune in gold, silver, and other valuable goods. They'd then sell their ill-gotten gains to unscrupulous merchants in pirate-friendly ports, pocketing the profits and using them to fund their high-seas hijinks. Life as a pirate wasn't all treasure chests and tropical islands, though. Far from it. These seafaring ne'er-do-wells faced numerous challenges, from treacherous weather and constant danger to scurvy and other diseases. Discipline was often harsh, with floggings, keel-hauling, and even marooning meted out as punishment for various offenses. But pirates also had their own code of conduct, which governed everything from the division of loot to the treatment of prisoners. Speaking of which, let's talk about pirate captives. Contrary to popular belief, pirates didn't always make their prisoners walk the plank. In fact, that particular practice was quite rare. Instead, they'd often hold their captives for ransom, using them as bargaining chips in negotiations with their home countries. Some prisoners were even offered the chance to join the pirate crew, which must have been a tempting proposition for those desperate to escape their dreary lives back home. Now, I know what you're thinking, what about the women? Were there any female pirates? Well, yes, there were. While it's true that piracy was a predominantly male profession, there were a few notable exceptions. In Bonnie and Mary Red, for example, were two notorious pirate lasses who sailed the high seas during the Golden Age of Piracy. The pair were known for their ferocity in battle, and they became the stuff of legend after they were captured and put on trial for piracy. So, what happened to these buccaneers of yore? Well, the Golden Age of Piracy came to an end as governments began to crack down on piracy, offering pardons to those who gave up their lawless ways and hunting down those who refused. This was made possible by the increasing power and reach of naval forces, as well as the decline of privateering as a legitimate profession. By the mid-18th century, piracy had been largely stamped out in the Atlantic and Caribbean, though it continued to flourish in other parts of the world. But the spirit of the pirate lived on, inspiring countless works of art, literature, and film. Pirates became romanticized figures, their rough-and-tumble lives transformed into thrilling tales of adventure and daring. And who can blame us for being captivated by these maritime marauders? After all, there's something undeniably alluring about the idea of throwing off the shackles of society and setting sail for a life of freedom and rebellion. So there you have it, me hearties, a brief but thrilling voyage through the history of pirates. I hope you've enjoyed this swashbuckling saga, and that it's inspired you to learn even more about these fascinating figures from our past. Until next time, this is Timeless Sagas, wishing you fair winds and following seas. R.